just a pleasantry. I mean, if you really started telling them how they are, they'd start going like this, you know. But about a third of the time when people are asking, how are you? My response is, I'm getting there. Now, if they have the misfortune to stick around a little bit, I then go into a brief elaboration, something along the lines of course, when you do get there, you're no longer there, you're here, so there is some place you'll never get to. But that's neither here nor there. Sometimes I wonder if I shouldn't just shut up during such temptations, but smart mouth that I am, I keep on doing it. The journey of life is a journey of getting there, of being there, being the place, for lack of a better word, where life is fulfilled. We always live as something of an in-between sort of people. We started on the journey, but never have quite arrived at the destination. Because the destination really turns out to be one more step on the journey. If you've ever started out on a trip now, you know that getting ready for the journey involves a lot of logistics. You plan where you're going and what you're going to see, you pack, you arrange for pets to be taken care of, you maybe stop the mail and empty the refrigerator, you study maps or perhaps buy tickets or make hotel reservations, you start the car and head out either to the highway or the airport or the bus terminal or whatever. Journeys are complicated things. And I often have the feeling after I take a vacation that when I get back, I need to take a vacation from my vacation. Journeys involve a lot of logistics. And the spiritual journey is no exception. Faithfulness involves planning and preparation and working out a lot of details to get there. Funny thing about it, in our culture these days, people largely are clueless about a lot of that, I think. I've talked to several parents over the years who justify not getting their kids to church, and they do so on the basis that they don't want to influence their kids in their religious choices, so they can figure it out for themselves when they're adults. There's a problem with that. I think what they're really saying, generally speaking, is that they don't want the kids to have a religious faith or faith background at all, because they aren't willing to take the time to invest in energy, to invest in the training and the motivation, and yes, outright indoctrination of what faith life is all about. And that's probably because mainly they resented going to church when they were kids and are not going to inflict their children on that. Kind of sad, but that's part of the cultural reality in which we find ourselves. That's why I think it's wonderful when you are paying a visit with your young son, Jackson. Did I get that right? Miracles can occur. It's a logistical matter to get people trained in faith life, whatever their age might be. And a tough reality for congregations is that we've lost a lot of the mechanism for that sort of training, primarily because people don't have the time anymore to engage in that. The blessings of Sunday school for children, for example, are, in this church and many others, now part of the worship service. Once the kids have their moment, they go back for their faith training in Kids Zone. In one church I served, it took me 3 attempts to establish a young adult Sunday school program. I tried 3 times over the 9 years that I was there, and in the last 4 years I was finally able to get it going and had it going pretty well, and then I had to leave, and I heard that it fell apart very quickly after that point. Training. Training's all a matter of time. Time that most precious of commodities that we never have enough of, and that we especially don't have enough of in this wacky, intense, and hectic world. We are so pressed with urgencies that we forget sometimes to deal with the importances. And faith life is important stuff. And so one of the great ironies of church life in this season of the year is that amidst all the hecticness, the season of Advent is telling us to slow down and reflect. It calls us to drink in the beauty and the wonder and the hope, peace, joy, love of the season that is Jesus. And it cautions us against the dangers of not doing so. The passage from Isaiah stands as an ideal of what we pursue, the one you heard a little bit earlier, where wolf lays down with lamb and leopard with goat, and so on. Essentially, it paints a vision of a world in harmony and peace with itself, under the context of the rule of the righteous judge at the beginning of the passage in Isaiah 11. And the judge has wisdom and understanding and counsel and power and a full awareness of the Creator. It's a beautiful vision. One that we sure don't have around here in our culture, for sure. It's a dream of what can be, if we would but take the time to prepare and build and accomplish that which is for God and not just for ourselves. And so, in a world that kind of needs a spiritual wake-up call, in our second passage, John the Baptist provides it. I love the phrases. You brood of vipers, who warned you to flee from the wrath that is to come. Produce fruit in keeping with repentance. The axe is already at the foot of the trees, and every tree that does not produce good fruit will be cut down and thrown into the fire. There are a couple of threats of fire in that passage from John, and such ought to scare the bejesus out of us. We ought to be wondering about ourselves and wondering whether our fruits are honestly worthy of repentance. We ought to see our world in this time as the chaotic, messed up, and self-righteous place that it is, and issue such same calls to repentance to that world. We ought to call out Democrats and Republicans and town hall mayors and presidents and senators and congresspeople and, yes, even coroners and dog catchers, as well as drug dealers and alcoholics and people just naturally on the street, with John's warning about the fruits of repentance. And we ought to be calling ourselves out at the same time, sinners that we all are. And we ought to look at all the crazy things we do to get ready for Christmas and then step back from them and take another look. And maybe we ought to just stop and pray and drink in the spirit of peace and joy, and then realize from that maybe our current cultural Christmas road is a train wreck and we need to figure out another way to do it. Maybe. That's what Advent is all about, my brothers and sisters, which is probably why it's the most ignored season of the church year. It calls upon us to think about things that we don't want to, and pray about things that we don't have time for, and live for things that would move us away from the self-absorbed, family-obsessed, falsely cheerful holiday into a realm where it once again becomes a holy day. Most of us won't do that. The urgencies outnumber the importances. And such sets us up to find ourselves exhausted rather than enlivened by Christmas. So people, what are we to do with this? Are we to practice the insanity of doing the same things over and over again and hoping for different outcomes? Or shall we listen to John the Baptist and Isaiah and view our frantic activities through the lens of whether those activities bear the fruits of repentance? Let us translate. Is what we do and who we are honest? An honest reflection of God's transforming love in our lives? Or is it a season where what happens is more the same old, same old? What the season calls us to do and be is something better than what we have been. Our goal should be one of coming out of Christmas with a little more warmth in our hearts, a little more commitment in our wills, a little more power in our gifts, a little more compassion for our neighbor, a little more hope for the oppressed, and a lot more Jesus in our lives. If we do that, my brothers and sisters, we'll go a long way towards getting there, the sort of there where God would have us be, as fervent, devoted, passionately loving, beautiful children of the Most High. Amen. So amidst this wonderful family of faith, small in number, mighty in spirit, I'm asking you a question. How Jesus-y are you going to be this Christmas and this Advent? And I would ask you to consider that. And I issue an invitation to reconsider it. And I also issue an invitation to guests and visitors among us, if you want to rededicate your life to Christ, become part of the ministry of this congregation. Come down during the singing of this hymn. Our song is People Look East, and we'll be singing 4 verses of it. So if you're able, please stand, and let's join in.
People look east, the time is near of the crowning of the year. Make your house fair as you are. Trim the hearth and set the table. People look east and sing today. Love, the guest is on the way. Furrows, be glad, though earth is bare. One more seed is planted there. Give up your strength, the seed to nourish, that in course the flower may flourish. People look east and sing today. Love, the rose is on the way. Stars keep the watch when night is dim. One more light the bowl shall brim, shining beyond the frosty weather, bright as sun and moon together.